You hear a humming sound, faint, rhythmic, coming from somewhere near the radiator assembly. Your suit radio died 30 seconds ago. Static, then silence. And now this mechanical drone filters through your helmet. Equipment malfunction, your brain decides. Pump bearing failure, maybe a misaligned motor mount. You've heard this sound 1,000 times in the station's guts. Your hand releases the safety tether, and you drift closer to investigate. This is how you die. Sound requires molecules to propagate. Compression waves traveling through matter at 343 meters per second in Earth atmosphere. Air molecules colliding in sequence like dominoes. Pressure differentials creating the phenomenon your ears decode as sound. In vacuum, at pressures below 10 to the -6th pascals, there are insufficient molecules for sound transmission. Zero sound propagation. None. A hull breach 2 meters from your face makes no sound at all. An explosion, a scream, a warning klaxon, all occur in perfect silence because there is no medium to carry the wave. But you hear something anyway. Your cardiovascular system generates 60 to 80 decibels of bone conduction noise. Blood pulsing through carotid arteries creates vibrations in your skull. Heart valves opening and closing send mechanical waves through your skeletal structure. The fluid in your inner ear sloshes with each head movement. Your jaw muscles create micro-vibrations. Your breathing generates pressure changes against your helmet's interior padding. All of this reaches your cochlea not through your eardrums but through bone conduction, the same mechanism that lets you hear your own voice from inside your head. Your brain, evolved for atmospheric pressure and desperate for sensory input in the sensory void, interprets this internal noise as external sound. The humming you hear is your own blood flow. The mechanical grinding is your jaw clenching. The distant alarm is pressure changes from your own breathing echoing in the helmet cavity. Meanwhile, the actual malfunction, venting oxygen behind you, makes no sound at all. Human neurology, optimized for millions of years in atmosphere. Your auditory cortex developed to process sound traveling through air at 1 atmosphere of pressure, 101.3 kilopascals, where every breaking branch and approaching predator generated acoustic warnings. In that environment, following sounds toward their source meant survival. Your ancestors who investigated strange noises lived long enough to reproduce. The ones who ignored auditory cues got eaten. This survival instinct is hardwired so deep you cannot override it consciously. When you hear a sound, your brainstem triggers orientation response before your frontal cortex can intervene. You turn toward the noise, you investigate, you trust your ears. In vacuum, this reflex kills you. Consider the Parmitano incident, EVA-23, 2013, during routine maintenance outside the International Space Station. Water leaked into his helmet from a contaminated cooling system. As the water globule expanded in microgravity, it covered his eyes, then his nose, filling the helmet's interior. He reported losing hearing as water covered the communication speakers inside his helmet. The critical detail, he didn't hear the leak. Water entering his helmet made no sound because there was no air pressure differential to create acoustic warning. He felt the wetness, the cold, the loss of visibility, but the leak itself was silent. Your suit maintains 101.3 kilopascals internal pressure. Outside is vacuum at 10 to the -6th pascals. Your helmet becomes a sealed acoustic chamber where every internal sound reverberates. You hear your breathing amplified. You hear your heartbeat transmitted through the helmet's contact points with your skull. You hear fabric rustling against the suit's interior. tool clinks transmitted through your gloves to your bones, the slight grinding of your neck seal when you turn your head. All of this is real sound traveling through the pressurized atmosphere inside your suit. But none of it tells you anything about the external environment. You cannot hear the pump bearings seizing. You cannot hear ammonia coolant spraying from a failed radiator coupling. You cannot hear your tether fraying against a sharp edge. You cannot hear another spacewalker shouting warnings 3 meters away. The hard vacuum between you and every external sound source is an absolute barrier, perfect insulation, complete silence. Yet your brain refuses to accept this. Pattern recognition systems evolved to extract signal from noise, begin generating false positives. You see the radiator assembly's slight vibration, and your auditory cortex creates the corresponding hum you expect to hear. Visual information gets cross-wired into phantom auditory input. You watch a robotic arm extend and swear you hear the motor whine. You see gas venting, and your brain supplies the hiss. None of these sounds exist outside your skull, but they feel absolutely real because your sensory integration systems are trying to maintain a coherent model of reality using corrupted data. This is how experienced spacewalkers die chasing ghosts. You release your tether and drift toward the radiator because you trust the humming sound to guide you to the malfunction. The actual problem, a micrometeorite puncture in your primary oxygen tank, is venting O2 into vacuum behind you with zero acoustic signature. Your suit's pressure sensors could tell you this, displaying a slow decrease in tank pressure on your heads-up display. But you're not looking at your instruments because you're following the sound, the humming that doesn't exist. The auditory hallucination your cardiovascular system and desperate brain created together. Hypoxia begins at around 14 seconds when pressure drops below 0.7 kilopascals. You don't notice because your attention is focused on the phantom equipment noise. By the time you recognize cognitive impairment, confusion, difficulty completing simple tasks, euphoria replacing appropriate concern, your blood oxygen saturation has dropped below the threshold for rational decision-making. You still hear the humming, louder now, more insistent, because your brain is starving for oxygen and generating increasingly bizarre sensory distortions. The mathematics are brutal. At 343 meters per second, sound in air covers the distance from a failing pump to your ear in milliseconds. At 0 meters per second, sound in vacuum never arrives. The gap between those numbers is infinite. No amount of sensitive hearing, no evolutionary optimization, no desperate attention can bridge that gap. Physics doesn't negotiate. The speed of sound in vacuum is zero, will always be zero, cannot be anything but zero, regardless of how urgently you need to hear the warning. Trust only visual indicators during EVA. Ignore auditory input entirely. When you hear something in the void, stop moving immediately and check suit pressure integrity first, because you're either hallucinating from oxygen deprivation or experiencing meaningless bone conduction noise from your own body. The radiator humming is your pulse. The distant alarm is pressure changes from your breathing. The grinding noise is your jaw clenching with concentration. None of it exists outside your helmet. The actual dangers in vacuum are silent. Leaks make no hiss. Explosions make no bang. Equipment failures give no acoustic warning. Your million-year-old ears, optimized for savanna predators and breaking branches, become useless meat that hallucinates danger in the one environment where you need accurate sensory data most. Every cell in your body was designed for 101.3 kilopascals and 21% oxygen and acoustic warning signs. Space offers none of these. Your biology becomes your liability. Your survival instinct becomes the thing that kills you. The silence of space isn't metaphorical, it's absolute. And that silence makes you hear things that aren't there, while the actual threats kill you in perfect quiet. The radiator hums because your heart beats. The pump grinds because your jaw clenches. The alarm sounds because your brain is dying, and desperate neurons fire random patterns that your auditory cortex interprets as meaning. You chase these phantom sounds until your oxygen runs out, until the cold seeps through your suit, until consciousness fades. And the whole time, the actual malfunction behind you makes no sound at all. Human hearing evolved for atmosphere. Vacuum is not atmosphere. Your ears lie to you in the void, and those lies are fatal. Trust your instruments. Ignore your senses. The numbers don't care that this feels wrong. Physics is patient. You are not.